not much of theory. So yeah, so my name is Antriksh, and this is a small presentation regarding the Panch Mahabhuta as they are described in Ayurveda, and how the Panch Mahabhuta system, along with the rest of the 5 metaphysical elements, is used in Ayurvedic acupressure to elevate different medical conditions. Okay, so the focus of this presentation is Panch Mahabhuta. So we'll start with some foundations and we'll gradually see how Ayurvedic acupressure has taken a few steps further from the basic implementation of these Panch Mahabhuta in Aushadhi. So where in Aushadhi the work is primarily upon 3 primary bhutas, in Ayurvedic acupressure we'll see that all the 5 bhutas are equally put into practice for different conditions. Okay, so this is a small slideshow that I want to start with. So this is a very basic, you can say, uh, Ashwatha tree. I mean, the concept is taken from Bhagavad Gita, as we all know. So Lord Krishna was he talks about the importance of Ashwatha tree. This is the people tree as we commonly know it. But the good thing about the interesting thing about this is that it's upside down. So on top you see the roots, and at the bottom you see the leaves. So we all know, life generally starts from the roots to the top. And here we see the roots are on the top and the fruit is on the bottom. Uh, the simple implication of this, if we understand this in Ayurvedic concept, is that, and with the perspective of treating people in everyday life, is that most of the problems that we see in today's life are fruits of what begins at the root. So what we see physically in the body, all the vyadhis, that means all the ailments, all the impairments, all the issues of the physical body, start from somewhere from the top, that is from the mind. So that is considered to be the root of all the ill effects that we observe in the entire body, and for which we create all the aushadhis and treatments in Ayurvedic acupressure for that matter. So somewhere or the other, we see that this the mano avastha, this condition of the mind, dictates how the person will be in his entire life. And in Ayurvedic concept also, the first cause of disease, of any disease, is also considered to be pragya aparad. That means misuse of our intellect. So we'll gradually see how this upside down tree becomes a reality in our everyday life, and how we can use this in the Ayurvedic system. Also, we'll see how the bhutas incorporate in such a manner that they create this upside down tree. So this is the foundation of, you can say, why at all Ayurveda had to be brought back to mankind from Indra, right? So we see the cause of disease as deduced by the various rishis and munis in the abode of Himalaya. So they came up with the basic idea. The majority of the disease that we all face in today's life are caused by pragya aparada. So we all know that a common thing that we all understand in today's life is that we all know we need to sleep early. But when do we sleep? After 12 or 1. So knowing we have the capacity and we have the intellect to deduce what is good for us and what is bad for us. And despite knowing this, we perform actions which go against us. So this is one example of pragya aparada. That means we have the intellect, but we do not use it for our good. Rather, we cause more harm to ourselves than good. Then it is, mostly to do with the senses, how we get driven by the senses rather than the pragya or wisdom. We either overindulge in our senses That means, or we misuse those senses. So in both these cases, we see that somewhere or the other, we are driven by the senses and not what is good for us, because senses can go in any direction that they want to. And as much they waver, so does our purpose of life. And the last thing, which is also the most important thing over here, is the concept of kala. Now, kala is not just time, but it is also the governing factor of life. We value life because we are driven and governed by kala. So we all know that none of us is immortal, right? We all have to die one day. But we do not understand the importance of kala in everyday life. So what do we do? Say, for example, simple things like, not eating food at time, not taking precaution according to the seasons and the weather, or for that matter, uh, the way we understand time is like we take certain actions according to time being one entity that is there forever. So when we talk about time, we are essentially looking uh, at a system that is always governing our life, and either we can ignore it or we can overuse it in certain manner. But every aspect of our body is governed by time. There is an age when people gain maturity. There's an age when people have puberty. So all these factors are driven by time. So not understanding time and doing things in a way that is against the cycle of life, so that really affects us in the long run. Moving ahead of this, we come down to the basic, the core aspects of Ayurveda here, and we talk about the Dravyas. Now, Dravyas are of 9 kind over here, starting from Akash, Vayu, Agni, Jal, Prithvi, Kala, Disha, Man, Atma, right? And what we call as Panch Mahabhuta are the first 5 elements which are also physical in nature. So if you see Akash, Vayu, Agni, Jal, Prithvi, these are the first 5 physical elements that we experience in everyday life. Although, to some reasons, Charaka did not believe in this aspect, and he thought that there are only 4 basic Mahabhutas, and those are Vayu, Agni, Jal, and Prithvi. Even Atharvaveda also believes that there are only 3 basic elements, that is Vayu, Agni, and Jal. And we will see in the next slide, and we'll see that in Ayurveda, most of the practices of medicine revolve around Vayu, Agni, and Jal. Majority of focus always goes into this, and hardly you find treatments that are related to Akasha and Prithvi. And this is where Ayurvedic acupressure, I think, takes a lead over here, because here we have the energy correspondence of all these 5 elements, and we can provide treatment to people based upon which element is imbalanced based upon our diagnosis. So Dravya, as we say, is actually a combination of guna and karma, that is property and action. So this itself is a definition of Dravya. That means anything that has a guna and a karma, right? So if we take example of Akasha, which is the first Dravya in this sense, it has the property or guna of sound. When we strike a musical instrument, because there is space, we hear sound. If there was no space, no sound would travel, right? So for something to travel from one distance to another, there has to be a space, a distance between, a separation. If there is no separation, nothing would exist. Point A would overlap upon point B, no traveling. And at the same time, if we conceptually understand Akasha, it is one element that helps manifestation of guna of all other 3 elements. And when we say 3 elements, it is Vayu, Agni, and Jal. We'll talk about why Prithvi is not a part of this. But Akasha helps all these 3 elements manifest itself in physicality. These elements cannot be destroyed, but their guna are expressed only when there is manifestation and separation. Otherwise, if all these elements are together, we won't find the separate qualities as we see in our human body. So Akasha is a combination of sound and permeability. Now, permeability is a is a specific guna, is a specific quality of Akasha. That means it allows things to cross over, it allows things to happen and occur. So while we see that Vayu creates action, for that action to take place, there has to be an element that allows that property to take place, and that is Akash. So simply going over to the elements now, Akash is an element that signifies separation. So until and unless there is separation, until unless there is a distinction from a vein to an artery, from lymph to blood, from nerve to a vein, from adipose tissue to fat tissue, all this distinction, even every distinction of cell. You know, when a fetus is formed, there is a intense multiplication of cells. These cells have to be separated. Now, the separation is a quality that is possible because of Akash. So Akash allows the separation of everything that we see around. You may call it as a distinguishing factor which distinguishes one thing from another. Otherwise, everything would be combined. And then, of course, there is no point of life. So anything where we require separation, in fact, you know, there are many people who have compression of the vertebra. So every vertebra has to have space as we know it. And when we treat people for separation of the intervertebral column, we also enhance Akasha because that separates the vertebra and the compression is relieved. So I'm also adding some practicality to how these things really are put into practice in everyday life. This is not just theory, this is also a very practical system that has been into practice in India for centuries, for decades. Another important quality of Akash is that it allows all other elements to differentiate. We've already talked about this in detail just now. And I would like to add something over here is that because there is Akasha, we see all the other elements. Now, the other end to Akasha is prithvi, which sublimates all the qualities of all other elements. So, for all other elements to manifest their qualities, Akasha has to be present. Uh, Charak identifies Akasha to have a sattvic guna. So, Vayu also is considered to have sattvic guna. So when we talk about the mental qualities, you know, when we talk about mental quality as we do treatment for mental ailments, we also keep in mind of these attributes which are closely linked to all the Mahabhutas. So it carries sattvic qualities, and in nature it combines readily with Vayu. And that is why you have the three dosha, which we'll talk about. The three dosha is a combination of basic Mahabhutas, and Akash naturally combines easily with Vayu. This is the reason, and this is how life begins. For life to begin, there has to be a way for life to exist in the form of differentiation. And when the differentiation takes place, Vayu, which is also known as prana, takes over.
Antariksh, I have a question. Can I ask?
Yeah, sure, sure, sure.
Since you're talking about Akash,
Yeah,
basically talking about space.
yes,
So, since I'm from psychology background and I work a lot with people who have, issues with thoughts.
yes,
So would it mean that lack of Akash could be the reason of constipation of thoughts, like too many of them stuck in the brain?
Yeah, I would like to add something over here. Uh, Mastisha or mind is generally considered to be under the protection of kapha, right? Kapha is the dominant, you can say, dosha of the mind. And if kapha is disturbed, which generally happens in the presence of vitiated vata, so too many thought means that there's too much of vayu in the mind, which has disturbed its stability because kapha is associated with stability. Now, too much of vata has disturbed the stability of the mind, and that is why vata means thought. Too much of vayu is too many thoughts, right? And these too many thoughts are not able to manifest themselves in an order, right? Obviously, the space is less and vayu is more. So what we can do is reduce our vayu and increase space. When we do that, we immediately see that the confusion and the delusion that is there in the mind gradually just comes down.
Oh, great. Thanks a lot, Antariksh.
Thank you. I hope that answers the question.
Yes, yes, it does. It
Yeah,
does.
thank you. So one of the important things of Akasha in from treatment perspective also is that it dilutes obstruction and it opposes resistance. Because for something to begin, we need Akasha. That means Akash, the natural quality of Akash is to let things happen. So obstruction is something that does not allow things to happen. So say, for example, if somebody finds it difficult to urinate and there is an obstruction, naturally you increase Akasha because that will dilute obstruction and resistance of any kind. And if you look closely, resistance is also a quality of mind. So people, you might find that they resist ideas, they resist thought process, they resist change. So one of the mental qualities in this case would be the akash is less. When the akash is less, the person becomes more rigid and more resistant to change. Right. So these are certain basic ideas of this is some basic idea of what akash is and how we use it in Ayurveda in practice. Coming to the second Bhuta in order, and that is Vayu. Now, in Atharva Veda, Vayu is considered to be the initiation of life, prana, as it is told. It is of four types, of course, which is prana Vayu, Udana Vayu, Samana Vayu, Vyana Vayu, and Apana Vayu. And all the five Vayus have a very specific function. In fact, prana Vayu is inhalation and absorption of any, you can say, any nutrients from the outer world, outer space. Okay, and Udana Vayu is exhalation, and that is how even Charaka describes the process of inhalation and exhalation, not on the basis of the functioning of lungs, because that is how we consider that in today's time. Lungs are the organs that help us breathe in and breathe out. But Charaka talks about the functioning of Vayus as how it helps us to breathe in and breathe out. Inhalation and exhalation is purely for Charaka an activity of Vayu. So you see a direct correlation in the energy field over here. Here, energy is directing the functioning of the physical body. So Vayu signifies activity and Vayu also signifies creation. And when we say creation, we mean creation of any kind, be it the thought that develops in the mind to the development of the fetus in the womb. Both are creation. And also, if you look at creation, creation of every new cell in the body is also creation, and that is also governed by Vayu. So Vayu is something that is life in itself. Without Vayu, neither will Vat exist, nor will Pith exist, nor will Kaph exist, because the energy supplied to all the other Mabhutas is possible only because of Vayu. In fact, it activates all the physical elements. Now, all these physical elements lie dormant until unless Vayu enters the body. So, it is the reason why all the activity takes place. If Vata is transferred from one place to another of the body, the natural abode of Vata is the lower abdominal area and the legs. If it transfers itself to the hands, because cheshta is one property of Vayu, that means activity is one property of Vayu. We see that traveling is also because of Vayu, uh, because that is an intrinsic quality of Vayu to to uh, to 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 create an activity all across the body. So thought process is also an activity. Taking an action is also an activity. All kind of activity, or for that matter, presence of life, because life means activity, is possible because of Vayu. Vayu also ignites fire, because without fire, without Vayu, you cannot have fire. So there is a natural progression from Akash to Vayu, and then to Agni. So all these elements fall into an order where one leads to another. So without Vayu, you cannot expect fire to take place, because fire requires Vayu to be present in the atmosphere. So it's not just what is inside our body that is governed by these elements. It is also the activity that we see of all these elements in the nature, in the world around, in the entire cosmos for that matter. They are all governed and driven and controlled by the interplay of all these five Mahabhutas. Going to the next element and next Mahabhuta, that is Agni, and it comes third from the in the order. Now, in Ayurveda, how we see things from the outside is governed by what is inside. And you may have seen people, who have a very dark complexion, not natural, but gradually has become dark. And these are the people who also become feeble and weak after some time. Because Agni, as we say, is, although it is not present in the elemental form in the human body, that means there is no fire, but there is a perception of fire. That means the qualities of fire exist. So either it can cook food in the body in the form of Jataragni, or it can burn the body if it goes out of control. And this burning is also facilitated by no other than Vayu, because Vayu, if it vitiates and disturbs Agni, it can create havoc upon the entire body. Agni is also considered to be a form of intellect, because it is sharp, it can dissect things. You when we try to understand different concepts, it depends upon how sharp our intellect is. And this intellect is sharpened by the quality of Agni, and sharpness is the quality of Agni. It supports creation, of course. Different elements have to be put together. And that's where we come into the second aspect of it, and that is amalgamation. So Agni is something that can melt two things together and merge them into one, of course, because of heat. So different tissues or the aspects of human body, if they have to be combined together, Agni performs that task. And also the transformation of one thing into another. So you have the entire the entire body chemistry that takes place. It's because of Agni. One form changing into another is also because of Agni, and it readily combines with Jal, and that is how you have Pitta. It is also related to Vayu, as we discussed earlier, that without Vayu, Agni cannot exist, because Agni requires Vayu for its combustion. And this brings us to Jal, the element that has very opposite qualities compared to Agni. And it is this balance of Jal and Agni that creates the thermal, you can say, regulation of our body. Otherwise, if there is only fire, our body will burn. If there is only Jal, it will become so cold There won't be any activity possible. So it signifies rasa. Now there's a very interesting concept over here. Uh, we know that all the five elements have their taste, right? Say for example, earth, that means prithvi is sweet, okay, and the taste of air is bitter. Now, for all these elements to have their taste manifested is only possible when water is mixed into that. So water is that element that when combined with any other uh, pure element or a combination of elements give rise to the taste that we have. So either you can have five basic tastes, or you can have a combination of tastes which are used in Ayurveda to identify the quality of a particular food, or to treat people because in the formulation of aushadhis. So water is the element that gives rise to taste. And also, it is a very important element when it comes to lubrication and cohesion. Now, till fire, we have a thread running that signifies distinction, you know, space signifying distinction. Air does not add anything to cohesion, neither does fire. But here we have a element of cohesion which will also continue to earth or prithvi element, as we'll see later on. So the lubrication of all the joints that are there in the body, and not just lubrication of joints, lubrication of organs like stomach and the large intestine, so that the amla or the acid in the stomach does not corrode the internal lining of the stomach, and so that the stool can pass through the large intestine. That all lubrication is taken care of by jala. Jal readily combines with prithvi, and that is how we have two elements that give rise to a stable structure that we'll see in the next element, and that is prithvi. So when we think about prithvi, the most important thing that comes in mind is stability. So this is the only element in of all the five elements where we have a concept of structure. Till now, that means starting from space or akasha. Space really does not do justice to akasha for that matter. Starting from akasha to jal, we do not have a concept of structure or stability, sturdiness. So this is where that element of rigidity comes into play, and and it plays a very important role in the overall skeletal structure of human body, as that primarily is prithvi. So prithvi is an element that combines readily uh, with the jal, and gives rise to the entire structure that we see in the human body. Some may be a little soft, some may be very hard, right? So this is the element that combines with all other gunas of other elements. But here, if you see a striking contrast between Prithvi and Akasha. Akasha is an element which allows all other elements to distinguish themselves along with their gunas, right? Here, Prithvi has the guna of all other four elements, but we do not see the separation of the other four elements in Prithvi, right? So the guna is there, but the separation is not there. So we see that the Akasha and Prithvi are on the far extreme of the thread. In between, we have three elements: Vayu, Agni, and Jal. And on the other two extremes, you have Akash and Prithvi, one facilitating separation, one cohesion. So this is the basic understanding and idea of the five elements that we have. We'll delve a little deeper into this, specifically the application part of Ayurvedic acupressure, and how we came up to the idea of how energy flows in the human body. And when we learn about Ayurvedic acupressure, we learn about Ayurvedic meridians. And we talk about the flow of energy because that flow of energy is the key to applying treatments in Ayurveda. Once we understand the flow, then we can apply the treatments. And Sushruta Samhita here comes to the rescue because the idea is borrowed heavily from Sushruta Samhita. So this is the basic understanding of what Vata, Pitta and Kapha is. So Vata is the combination of Akash and Vayu. Pitta is the combination of Agni and Jal. And Kapha is the combination of Jal and Prithvi, as we just talked about. So as far as the Tridosha is concerned, that means Vata, Pitta and Kapha, there is a strength or of hierarchy over here, or hierarchy of strength over here. So we see in Ayurveda in practice that the most strongest of all the three dosha is the Vata. Because of course you can understand why. The two elements that give rise to Vata as a dosh is Vayu and Akasha. And Vayu, being the origin of life, has to be the strongest of them all. Because if Vayu is not there, all the other elements would not be able to manifest themselves or would not be able to cause any effect in the human body because that cause is uh, facilitated by the energy given by Vayu. So Vayu is the dominant element of Vata. And since Vayu is the strongest, Vata is the strongest. Then the next dosha, that is Pitta, is governed primarily by Agni. And in Ayurveda, if we see the practical aspect, I'll just give an example from an everyday life. The common thing that we all face in today's time is acidity, right? Heartburn, chest burn, okay, uh, and other issues of the skin like allergy and all these things. The primary aspect that you see is something related to fire. Something is burning or something is heated up. And although Pitta is composed of Agni and Jal, but the dominant factor that creates that results into perturbation of Pitta or the effects of Pitta upon the body and the mind is Agni. So after Vayu, it is Agni that is the most dominant and strongest of all the five elements that we see. Moving downwards is Kapha, and Kapha, as we know, is a combination of Jal and Prithvi. But within Jal and Prithvi also, it is Jal element that is the most dominant. And out of the three, Vayu, Agni, and Jal, Jal is the weakest of all three. So most of the problems that we see in today's life are either related to Vayu and Agni and then Jal. So Vata dosh are the most common dosh, and in Ayurveda about 80, about 70 vikar or 70 kind of ailments and diseases have been described that are purely and solely because of Vata vitiation or Kupit Vata ke karan. So moving ahead, and this is a very important aspect of movement of dosha, and from here comes the concept of Ayurvedic acupressure treatment. Of course, the basic idea of Ayurvedic acupressure uh, is the division of the body according to Vata, Pitta, and Kapha, and the treatment which is given upon the joints of the finger. The movement of the dosha is an important aspect when we come to the treatment part of Ayurveda or Ayurvedic acupressure. And we see that the movement of dosha is of two kinds primarily. Leaving apart prakrit or normal, which is the balanced state of dosha, that means all vata, kapha, and pitta are in the balanced state, which is known as prakrit condition of prakrit or normal. Whenever there is a vitiation of either Vata or Pitta or Kapha or a combination of the three, you have a condition that is called Vikrat. Now, Vikrat is possible of is possible of two kinds. One is hypo, or one is hyper. So hypo is where one Vat is less, or Pitta is more, and Kapha is more. Or hyper is a condition where, say for example, Vat is more and Pitta and Kapha are less. So these two situations are there, which we call as Vikrita. So these are to be balanced, and this is how we balance uh, the hypo and hyper condition in Ayurvedic acupressure through a method called sedation and tonification. So we sedate and tonify different elements based upon our evaluation of the problem. So, for example, if someone has acidity, we know that it is the uh, it is in the region of or abode of pitta in the human body, that is the middle area of the human beings. So we reduce as the effect of fire in the stomach, and gradually you see that the effects of acidity become less. Second is the movement of dosha in the trunk region, that means the entire trunk region of the human body. Then the periphery, which is the skin and the other peripheral aspects of human body. And the last is marma. Now, marma is are kind of relay channels, which are dense energy centers of the human body located upon the nadis. So these are the channels through which prana flows from chakras to the rest of the body. So the dosha can affect the trunk periphery, or also they can affect the marma. If marma are affected, then the related areas which the marma supplies prana to also gets affected. Here what we are interested is the movement of dosha and the direction. So Charaka Samhita describes that there are three directions in which the doshas can move in the human body. So one is upwards, which can be considered as vertical. One is downwards, which is also vertical. Another that is transverse, right? So here you see there's an upward movement, there's a downward movement, and there's a transverse movement, right? And in transverse, there is also spiral movement, which we see when we do treatment in human body according to the principles of Ayurvedic acupressure. So all these three directions are well documented in Ayurveda and well implemented in Ayurvedic acupressure. So we can say that Ayurvedic acupressure imbibes a lot from the pure concepts of Ayurveda and only takes them further to ease the condition of human beings on this planet. So this is really a very nice system. And as you see, it is logical, scientific, and also it lives up to the expectations of a legacy that we in India have come up with. So thank you so much. This is all from my side. I hope this was informative and useful.